day, everybody. We are here. I am live. And just a little bit of a notation because there is a lot going on in my house right now. You might hear some sounds. Our amazing contractor is here. He's doing some painting for us and finishing up. My dog is here. So there could be lots going on. You could hear dogs barking. You could hear a little bit of banging, but whatever it is, we're going to forge through. We're going to forge ahead because we are live and that's what that's all about. So yeah, just a small warning, but that's all right. Moving right along. If you were joining me here live today, say hi in the comments. I will say hi back. I can see them today, which, as you know, is always a problem for me, but today it is not. So hooray for that. I am covering a really interesting topic today, and it's going to be kind of part of a series that I had in my mind to do about emotions or feelings, things of this nature. And we're kind of starting from the bottom. We're going to work our way up. I'm not entirely sure how many I'm going to do because there are quite a few, but either way, I will let you know because I think this is something that all of us can benefit from. We did have a couple of questions in the group. I will address them at the end of this live in hopes that I have already answered them along the way. But we are starting we are starting this series with shame. I don't know why I'm saying it so, positively, but we are uplifting in this group. But yeah, so let me kind of lay this out for you as to why I wanted to do this. So first things first, let's pull up the notes. Okay, so like I said, this is a journey, and I got this idea from doing some reading on the levels of consciousness. There's this book I'm reading called Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, which is really kind of technical. And, as I'm reading it, I'm like, I gotta find, I like this concept, I like this idea, but I need to find a way to make it relatable to you in the community. So for the purposes of this series, when we're exploring all these feelings and emotions, we're gonna look at them like this, on a sliding scale. And in here, I'm always talking about energetic output, and what our energy output is what we get in return. So I want you to think of it like this. So this scale, imagine with me, goes from energetic output level 20 to energetic output level 1000. And again, I'm explaining this in such a way that I want everybody, I'm kind of like bringing it to a level that we can all understand together. So if you have read Transcending Levels of Consciousness and you're like, you're not explaining it right, I'm doing this on purpose. So now, when we talk about frequency, when we talk about vibration, energetic output, I always say, if you're joyful and full of compassion, love, and peace, you're vibing high. You are putting all of your vibrations out into the world. You are getting all of the same back. But we got to start somewhere, I didn't get to a higher vibration that I'm at now by skipping all the other ones. I had to go through them all. So when we start with shame is at level 20. Okay. So even you can think about this as a volume level from full blast to barely hearing it. So shame is the knob is turned way down. You can barely hear it. And if we're talking about our energy, shame is a very, very dense vibration, low vibration. It's, if you think about it coming off your body, it's here, right? And remember, when we talk about energy, what you put out is what you get back, right? So if you're struggling with shame, if you're feeling challenged with shame, if this is something or a mindset or a feeling that you're feeling at the moment, we can move you out of that. That is the goal. So yes, we're sitting at 20 with, peace and enlightenment being at 1,000. So we're going to go through a whole bunch of these. They don't go 20, 21, 22. Don't worry. You're not going to have 980 lives of me talking about this. Rest assured. But as a caveat, because I always like to start with a caveat, you know me, if you are someone that is finding yourself in a perpetual shame spiral, I don't want you to feel as though I am shaming you further. That is not the intention here. We don't want you feeling any additional shame. I want you to know it's okay because I lived in this shame spiral myself. I experienced this for a really, really long time, and it's where I started out. We have to start somewhere. So if you're here, it's okay. We can move you up the scale. We can get you going, right? But we've got to start somewhere, so I don't want you to feel shameful for being in a shame spiral. It's okay. That's what this is for us to kind of talk about it, for us to move through it, understand it, And at the end, of course, I'm going to give you some information as to how you can kind of gradually get yourself out of it, right? But first, we need to know why you're here, because I love to start that way, as you know. So you might be here, and I asked a lot of questions in the Facebook group this week about shame and kind of gauging where we're all at. And a lot of people said this came from their family. So if you were someone that came from a family where you grew up and people were like, shame on you constantly, shame on you for this, or they were ashamed of you, or they were embarrassed by your behavior, that is one of the reasons you could be here and why this topic might interest you, because you know this is how you grew up, but you're not quite sure how to get through it. If you are of the opinion that shame is part of your identity, and that's it, like I am a person that lives in perpetual shame, there's no getting out of it, there's no, I've had this my whole life, I can't get away from it, this is a great one to tune into, because you can. Believe me, I'm about empowering you and showing you the way towards healing and towards leaving that piece of you behind, because I promise you, just because you felt shame in the past, or maybe you've been feeling that way for most of your life, it doesn't have to continue being that way. We can make changes and we can move out of it. If you find yourself in a perpetual state of worthlessness, low self-esteem, low self-loathing, and you're ready to begin to release it, welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in, come on inside. Let's chat about it, because it is possible. If you've been doing a lot of digging and starting to recognize, because if you're here and you've been watching these lives, you've been on a journey with me. You've started it, we started back in February, which was many, many moons ago, right? So you've done a lot of self-discovery up until this point. And if you've been doing all that digging and now you've discovered that the root of a lot of who you are in the present moment is around shame, come on, you're in the right place. I am excited. And if you're tired of feeling ashamed of who you are and you're ready to step into your authentic self, I am here to support you in the best way possible. So let's begin to unlearn the shame spiral. Remember, we are programmed from a very young age, a very, very young age. The programming starts, societal programming, parental programming, school programming. You get it from everywhere. So and other people are the people that cause you to have shame, or to heighten it more so than any normal person has shame. Because really and truly, we've all had shame at one point or another. We've all been ashamed of something we've done. We've all woke up at 2:00 in the morning and been like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm so ashamed. But there's a little bit is normal, but to have it perpetually, to have it to the point where it's toxic to who you are and how you function in the world, that's what we want to start to release. So it's time to increase self-compassion and reduce shame. So let's get into the definition, because that's the next step, obviously. I don't know why I say that every week. Obviously, that's the next step. So the Dictionary of Psychology says shame is highly unpleasant, self-conscious emotion arising from the sense of there being something dishonorable or immodest in one's own conduct or circumstances. Very Well Mind says shame is a feeling of embarrassment or humiliation that arises in relation to the perception of having done something dishonorable, immoral, or improper. So those are the two definitions. And as I just said, this is something, a little bit of shame goes a long way, because as we grow up, obviously, and evolutionarily speaking, like shame becomes kind of a self-defense mechanism in a lot of ways, because if we feel shame, it kind of keeps us, and literally when I was reading the research, like it says a little bit of shame keeps us in check, which I don't know that I actually agree with that, but some of it is normal. It has protected us in the past. It has kept us from making decisions that are, maybe not so good for us. If we have those feelings a little bit of the time, that's okay. It kind of keeps us level-headed, level-grounded, not making all kinds of B choices, right? But again, if we're continuously in that spiral, then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes detrimental to our own well-being. Tanya says, hi Tanya. And I don't want there to be anything that is a detriment to your well-being, because even though I just said the word problem, I should. Now I'm saying the word should. Look at me, I'm all over the place saying problem and should. Neither of those things are the case. Nothing's a problem. Everything is meant for you in that moment. And what we want to do is heighten your experience, increase your vibration, because we know shame, obviously we just learned earlier, energetically speaking, shame is vibrationally lower. We want to move out of low vibe into high vibe, and it is possible. So it's not a problem. It is where you are now, but we're moving on for it. And around here, we know you are all valuable, you are worthy, you are deserving, you're amazing, and we want to empower you to shift out of shame. So let's get to the bottom and move right through it. So let's talk about some signs that you might have internalized shame, because without awareness, without a personal observation, we can't make any sort of decision or move ourselves out of it. So let's talk about some of those things. And interestingly enough about shame, and this was also something I found in the research, it's obviously not a classic mental health issue. It's not defined as a mental health issue, but it's kind of the root of some of these issues. But that being said, even though it's not a classic or formal diagnosis, it can have a profound impact on who you are. Because I know for me, it sure as heck impacted me. So let's talk about it. And keep in mind too, I think if you meet somebody that is in a perpetual shame spiral, you can read it on their whole body. You will know, you can tell in their behavior, how they hold themselves, how they, like if they've slumped, if there's something in their shoulders, can they make eye contact? There's all kinds of signs that you can see and read off another person that will indicate that they might be struggling with this. But let's talk about some of the signs. Perfectionism. We talked about this here in the group. It is in the, if you're new to the group, it's actually in, if you look under video, under media, under videos, you will see there's a perfectionism one there. And the reason why perfectionism is a sign of shame is because in being a perfect human being and trying to be as perfect as we can and holding ourselves to extremely high standards, those feelings of shame can be subsided, because if you are perfect, there's nothing to be ashamed about. Make sense? So that's number one, perfectionism. Addictive coping mechanisms. And I call them coping mechanisms and for a reason, because when people use drugs or alcohol, shopping, gambling, phone, because believe you me, this is an addiction. This is just as much of an addiction as anything else. And the people that are addicted to their phone, you know them. They can't put it down, right? Addictive coping mechanisms, because you are so ashamed of feeling said shame that you then want to numb the shame. It's like you're ashamed of feeling shame, so you numb those feelings, right? And you're doing it by engaging in some of these coping mechanisms. So that's another sign that you're dealing with perpetual shame. Lack of boundaries or people pleasing. To feel better about yourself, you do everything for other people as a means to hide from yourself, to hide from feeling your emotions. So you're over the top about everybody else, because it is actually, you have to do a lot of deep inner work to be able to look within and kind of pick apart the root of that shame. So you tend to lack boundaries and you're an extreme people pleaser, so much so that you get walked on by others. But that is better than recognizing and realizing your own rules of engagement, standing up for yourself, being your authentic being, and admitting that there is a root to this kind of shame feeling that you have. Krista says, that's too relatable. Super people pleaser here. Yes, I was right there with you, Krista, right there with you for sure. But we can move out of that. And you need to ask yourself too, is this related to shame? Why am I doing this? And start asking those questions. Why? Ask at least 5 whys to get to the bottom of it. Another sign is imposter syndrome. And if you're not familiar with imposter syndrome, it is this kind of innate feeling that you are an imposter, that people are going to find you out and they're going to discover all of the nasty things you don't like about yourself, and you're just putting on a mask, right? So a sign of shame can be this feeling of imposter syndrome, and it's almost like you don't want anyone to know that you have all these things you feel shameful about, because if they find that out, then they will think you are an imposter in life, and we don't want that. So imposter syndrome and feeling like that can be a sign that you have internalized shame. If you are highly defensive, we all know these people. We all know them, right? Because there's so much shame associated with your identity, you will tend to be overly defensive as a means to protect yourself. Defensiveness is a way to protect yourself. It is a defense mechanism, so that, it's like somebody says something to you and you're filled with so much guilt and doubt and shame and low self-worth that you have to defend anything, because that's the only way you can feel better about yourself. So that might be a sign that you need to question a little bit. Is there an origin of shame here? Maybe I need to look a little bit deeper. If you feel guilty constantly, without even evidence that there's anything to feel guilty about, if it's so irrational, this guilt, and you are saying sorry frequently, and I'm not talking about like the sorry Canadians say, because Canadians always say they're sorry, we're known for it, it's over the top, but if you are like feeling perpetually guilty about everything without logic and it's completely irrational, it could be a sign that we've got some digging to do in terms of shame. If you're if you are afraid to speak your mind, your heart, use your voice, and you're so consumed and concerned with saying something wrong and being laughed at, time to dig a little bit deeper. Okay, so here are some statements you actually might say to yourself. So these are pretty good indications that you're struggling with or dealing with some internalized shame. If this sounds like you, I am dumb, I am broken, I am a complete failure, I am selfish, I'm a terrible friend, I don't matter, I'm a terrible human being, I don't matter to others or to myself. If something happened to me, nobody would care. These are all kinds of statements that play out in the mind, and they're habitual thoughts. Believe you me, you've thought them 1,000,001 times, so they're stuck there. But you've got to kind of catch yourself in those moments and be like, wait a minute, why am I saying that? Why am I saying I'm dumb? Why am I saying I'm dumb? Why am I doing this to myself? Ask the question, what's the next answer? And when you get the next answer, ask why, and you will get to the root of that. And I guarantee you there is probably some shaming that has happened, and that is why you feel that way. Right? I'll give you a perfect example. I used to be very ashamed of my body, like crazy. I would be so hard on myself. And some of you are going to be sitting there right where you are right now, laughing at me and thinking, what do you have to be ashamed about? But I was shamed so much as a child. When I was 7 years old, my friend on the beach laughed at me because my butt was so big. And it gave me shame about my body right there and then. And it was consistently, I have a big butt. I have a big butt. I'm unattractive. I'm not the perfect size. All of these things that I was beating myself up for around my body image came from that moment of being shamed. So you see how it happens in childhood, and you carry it with you through into adulthood, and it still impacts you, and it still impacts me to this day. I think it impacts all women, but look back. Who shamed you about that? And if you're saying some of these statements, we got to dig deeper. So let's talk about some of the origins of the shame story, because this is a good segue, because I was just talking about my childhood, because there are so many. These can come from all over, and it's going to be unique and individual to every single person, right? Number one is childhood experiences, like I just said, right? And like someone teased you, someone made fun of you, someone called you stupid when you were a kid, and it impacted you emotionally, and so much so that you have become internally shameful about your ability to be intelligent. Had like a little blip in the brain there, and it's similarly, if your primary caregivers shamed you or said those words to you, shame on you, whatever they were telling you, whatever they were, saying, shame, 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 again, it's going to become internalized because you hear it over and over and over again from such a small age. And when you're very, very little, you're like a sponge, you're taking on everything. That's where you're learning all these things, right? So, and when it comes to anything, and I will say this, when it comes to anything, when you're digging deep and you're thinking about, like, did I get this from my parents? Did it come from my primary caregivers? Are they the root of what I'm struggling with today? I want you to have a little bit of compassion, because I want you to think about your parents in the same way you would think about yourself. Like, what was that, the messaging that they received from their parents? Is that what came from their own primary caregivers? And now they're bringing it down to you because that's all they know. So you kind of have to look at that as well too, especially when stuff comes up and outside of this particular topic, there are so many other ways that parents can really have an impact on how we grow up, but we have to think, how did they grow up? And have a little compassion, have a little love for them, because they too could be in a pattern that they learned. So kind of keep that in mind, and so much of this is passed down, but have compassion. Have compassion, because you never know, and you probably will never know unless they've shared it with you. So another way that we can have an origin of shame is through trauma or neglect. So if you were traumatized, like as a child, especially as it relates to sexual abuse, things of that nature, if something like that happened to you, you're keeping it a secret. You're so shameful that you had that experience. And then you become ashamed of your own sexuality. And then as you grow older, you bring that with you. It carries along into your adulthood. And then, you've got shame about your body, shame about your sexuality. And then it just kind of leads to this, shame around intimacy and all of these things. So you see how something that happened to you when you're very young can build and evolve to where you are as an adult. And it throws you in this kind of toxic shame spiral or internalized shame spiral, right? So another way this can, the origin can be consistent rejection from others. If you were, I just look back at poor little Denise, and I use myself as as an example quite often to provide context, because obviously I'm most familiar with my own story, but I was teased so much as a kid. Nobody wanted to hang out with me. Nobody wanted to be around me. Nobody wanted to be near me. I was always teased. I was told too loud, told I was fat, told I was annoying. So it's like I had so much rejection as a child growing up that it took me a really long time to unlearn that. And it's only probably been in the last, I would say, decade that I've been able to break a lot of that programming and come into my own and really truly love myself. But it took a while because I had to work through and sort through a lot of that shame, and I had to be really, really aware of it. Bullying is another thing about you. Bullying is another one. I mean, heck, kids can be so mean. But again, I always think back, to these kids that bullied me. And I think to myself, well, what happened to them? What's going on with them that they are bullying me, right? So I try to have compassion in that way. But I mean, that took a long time to come across. So if you were bullied as a kid, you probably experienced a lot of shame. Persistent failure. If you feel as though, or you view your life through a lens of perpetual failure, I failed at my marriage, I failed as a mother, I failed as a friend, I failed in school, I wasn't very smart. That failure story becomes so deeply rooted in you, and then shame builds around it because you're so ashamed that you're not like other people. So persistent failure can be a really interesting origin and something to dig deeper around. Certain mental health disorders, as we talked about, shame can be a symptom of certain mental health disorders. So that could be a reason you're feeling this perpetual shame. And your inability to live up to unrealistic standards. We talk about this all the time. We all do it. We set these incredibly high standards for ourselves, so high that nobody could ever reach them, let alone us, right? So we have this perfectionism. And, if you can't attain these sky high standards you've set for yourself, then you're like ashamed of the fact that you couldn't reach them to begin with. But as we know, perfectionism can be a sign of shame. So it's really about digging deep and becoming the detective in your own life, becoming the observer in your own life so that you can understand where this is coming from. Because only in knowing where it comes from can you begin to dissect it, analyze it, and actually find out the truth of the matter and label it for what it is. So, okay, I'm going to take a pause and take a drink because I've been going like crazy. So we're going to talk about how to cope with shame in a healthy way. And I want to set this up kind of differently than I normally do because I want to set it up almost like a project plan. Like we're going to put a plan in place, like we are going to do this together, and it's going to read in that way. So when you're coping with shame, you need to first and foremost be here now. Be here right now in the present moment. Be okay. Be accepting. Embrace and allow yourself to have been a person that has dealt with internalized shame up until this very moment, up until right now, this very minute. Be okay with where you are. We can't go back. You don't want to go back and be beating yourself up over this or feeling like, oh my God, like I can't believe I've lived like this for so long. I'm so ashamed. Then you're feeling shame around your shame. That's going to continue to decrease the vibrational output that you're putting out. We want to increase it. So no feeling shame about shame. We don't have to. Be where you are right here, right now. You're exactly where you need to be. And allow yourself to feel any emotions associated with it. So if you've lived like this for most of your life and you need to cry about it, you need to fling yourself on the staircase and, throw on your favorite emotional song and cry it out. Feel the emotions, feel the anger, feel the sadness. Be here now. Feel it. Because until you feel it, you cannot move through it. It's okay to sit and label it. And I'm freaking angry. I am angry that my parents said shame on you. I am angry that those kids teased me so much. I am angry that I was made to feel like a failure. It's okay. Label the feeling, sit with the emotion, and find compassion for yourself. Find compassion and know that this is the start of your journey, And if you can't find compassion for yourself, my friend, if you cannot find it within your own heart, to tend to yourself with a little bit of self-love, self-care, self-compassion, you're going to continue to feel stuck. And we don't want that. We're moving on. We're moving out, right? And remember, you got to start somewhere. And you got to give yourself permission to forgive and release. Forgive and release, right? So the second part of our project plan to dealing with shame is exploring the shame story. I gave you lots of different ideas of where the origin of the shame story could come. What is the root of it? Begin to excavate and understand the origin on your own terms, even if it's painful. It's probably going to be painful, guys, but some of the best growth and development comes from discomfort, pain, fear, all of those things, right? You know that you have it within you to navigate the healing process. You can do hard things. You are resilient. You can do it. You are strong enough to get through it. So even if the emotions are painful and exploring the shame story is going to be a little bit difficult, you can handle it. I know you do. You can. I know you do. Anyways, so to do as it relates to exploring a shame story, pay attention to your emotions. Under what circumstances does your shame show itself? And this takes you being very, very aware of when it's happening and being like, wait a minute, I'm feeling really ashamed right now. What is the emotion associated with this? Why am I feeling this emotion? And when you've discovered it, why am I feeling the emotion? Well, why is that? 5 whys. Always 5 whys. Okay? So that is your to-do as it relates to the second part of the project plan, exploring your shame story. Number 3, determine your end goal. Okay? If you're ready to release shame, step into your worthiness and your authenticity, what does that look like for you? Because you've carried this with you for so long up until this point. What does it look like? What does it look like when you no longer have shame? What kind of person are you? How do you act? How do you hold yourself up? So if you're someone that's had a lot of internalized shame and you've been kind of crouched down, you don't make eye contact, you kind of keep quiet, you don't speak your own mind. Who is it that is like, what part of you, when you move through this and you've moved on to the next section and you've increased your vibration, what does that person look like? Is her shoulders back? Does she make great eye contact? Does she speak her mind? You need to kind of have an idea of what that end goal is. And once you know what she is, how she looks, then begin mentally rehearsing. Think about it. How does she navigate the world? How does she interact with other people? And use your journal. Get your journal out, jot down your thoughts, really, really be succinct and allow your creative imagination to flow. Be as detailed as possible, because before we can get anywhere, we need to know what that looks like. Number 4, then you can embark on the journey. So like any project plan, if we've laid the foundation and we've made all our notes and we know where we're going and we've gotten, we've moved through all the emotions, now we have confidence to move on to the next part. We are embarking on leaving our shame spiral behind. It's over there and we're leaving. We're getting in the boat, we're leaving the shame spiral, right? So now you've got a plan. You can be confident. You can, is it going to be rocky along the way? Yeah, absolutely. You're probably going to have blips in the road. You're probably going to feel shame again. This is going to happen. It's okay. It is okay. It won't be perfect. You'll have those days where it will just feel like a train wreck, but it's okay. An organic part of the journey out of shame is recognizing it's a process. It won't always be perfect. Even if you stumble, you're still moving in the right direction. So even if you stumble and you feel like you're being pulled back, you're not going back in the full spiral. You might just go this way a little bit, but no. We're going to forge ahead. So let's move towards the end goal that we've mentally rehearsed with confidence. Number 5 is assess your fears. The ego mind, the mind that wants to protect us by keeping us safe, keeping us stuck, keeping us right where we are, because that is familiar, loves to get in the way. So you need to understand what your fears are. What are you scared of? If you move away from this shame and you start to release it and leave it behind, what are some of the fears that come up, right? And take a good look at them, write them all down so that when you encounter a fear along the way, oh, nope, that's my fear. That's my fear talking. And you can, move away from it a little bit easier. And I mean, I love to do this. Literally talk to your ego. Tell it, thank you for protecting me. Thank you for giving me this fear, but I want to leave this behind. Because your ego mind might say, oh, but if you don't have shame around being a failure, then you might be open to being a failure again. But that is the ego mind trying to protect you, trying to tell you to keep things status quo. But that is not what we're doing around here. We don't keep things status quo, because that is not going to move us in the direction we want, right? So number 5, on the project plan, assess your fears. 2 more steps. Number 6, consider yourself victorious. I want you to celebrate all of the work you have done and continue to do. If you were able to identify the origin of your shame, celebrate. If you were able to take one baby step away from feeling like that every day, celebrate. If you were able to get over one of your fears that have been holding you back as it relates to your shame story, victory. You are stronger, more resilient, and empowered for having gone through this experience. Celebrate it every step of the way. Every single step. And finally, number 7, feel your energetic output surge as we leave shame behind and we move on to our next kind of, emotion that comes after that. And we'll learn about that, not next week, but the week after. Feel what it feels like. Man, I don't feel like that same weight on my shoulders, that same low vibration, that low energy. I feel like I'm a little bit uplifted. My spirit feels like it's a little bit uplifted. Feel the shift. Allow yourself to feel it and notice it, right? And of course, if this is something you're struggling with, I always offer my support to all of you. I am here. I am here to support you in whatever way you need. And if you're curious about my services, because I work on shame a lot with a lot of my clients, you can move out of it. Please reach out to me, send me a message, leave me a comment, whatever it is, I'm here for you. Let's chat about it. Whoo! Now we've reached the end. So there were a couple of questions, both from Nettie and Tammy Anderson. I have to actually specify which Tammy, because I swear to you, we have like 4 Denises, 5 Tammys. Like, we got a lot of people in this group. We're over 400 strong now. Once we get to 500, I'm going to do a giveaway. So invite your friends, because I'm definitely going to do one. So Nettie asked the question, how do you control it? How do you control shame? The first step in controlling shame is recognizing and admitting the impact it has had on you up until this point. Become the observer in your own life. Act like a detective. Get to the root. We talked about this. Ask yourself 5 whys. From there, it's all about moving through it slowly, picturing how things will be different, mentally rehearsing what it'll look like when you leave your shame behind. And, I think Nettie, I think that there's a part of us, and this goes for everybody else, where you need to kind of embrace the shame. Recognize it, embrace it, thank it. It's protected you. Whether we like to admit it or not, it has acted as a defense mechanism. It has been there to serve a purpose up until now. But only now are you ready to release it, right? Show yourself love, acceptance, and seek support as you need it. But the first part of controlling it is recognizing it, realizing it, and knowing when it comes up for you. Those are the first pieces. Then you can start asking those 5 whys and digging deeper. Tammy Anderson asks, how do I get rid of it for good mentally? How do I get it out of my cells and my body? This is an amazing question, because your body remembers everything. Your body keeps the score. There's a really good book about trauma that's called Your Body Keeps the Score, The Body Keeps the Score. It's a really, really great book. If you're interested, you should check that one out. But the first step, again, similarly to Nettie, is to recognize and state outright that you're ready to move beyond it. You're ready to move out of this place of shame. But before you can do that, you have to observe it, understand it, know the root cause of it, and really pick that apart and analyzing it, right? And then when you do that, it's about saying, I release the shame. I am moving out of this. I am free to live the life that I choose, and starting to flip around some of those habitual thoughts associated with it, right? And what might be very helpful for you, Tammy, is knowing you're worthy, or maybe practicing some mantras, right? Whenever that shame story comes up and you find yourself in that spiral, you can say, I love and accept myself no matter what. I love and accept myself completely and entirely. I am okay in this moment, no matter what I am thinking and feeling. And be okay with where you are, because we all want to control things, right? But controlling it isn't really the best way to get out of it, because you can't really control it unless you understand it. And you can't really get it out of your body until you know the root cause. So these are some exploration techniques that you can use. And alternatively, you can practice being mindful of the thoughts of shame by simply observing them. So when it comes up, be like, okay, there's the shame thought, and let it pass by. Especially after you've discovered the origin and you know what it is, and you know what you're dealing with, and you've kind of picked it apart, as they start to come up again, as the feelings of shame come up, because they will. This is not going to happen overnight. This is a process. It's going to take time. It's going to take dedication and practice. But if the story starts to come up, you can be like, oh, there it is. Cool. And then move on with your life. Just label it. Picture it like clouds. Like, see it? Oh, there's a cloud. And then let it go, right? And with practice, this will get easier. If you guys have any other questions or you need more details about this, please let me know. Drop it in the comments below and I will answer it. Just as an FYI, I will not be available next week. I am taking a step away. There will be reminders in the group coming up on Monday, just to let you know, but I will be away all next week. So if you leave me comments and I don't answer right away, that is why. But I will get back to you all on August the 9th. And with that is our live for today, and I will see you all next time. The next live will be, let's look at the calendar. Not the 6th, that's wrong. On the 13th of August, Friday the 13th, we will have another live, and we'll be talking about another feeling/emotion, and we're going to go up the next scale from 20 to 30. So I will see you all then, and I hope you have a lovely weekend and a lovely week next week, and I will see you on the 9th. Bye, everybody.